Hello and welcome to Unit 8 Statistics, Lesson number 5, Relative Frequency. Your objective is to find relative frequency from a set of data points. And I do not have an essential question for this lesson. Relative frequency shows how often something happens. Relative frequency shows that ratio, that part to whole, of the selected outcomes to its total. So we're dividing by the outcomes. It can be displayed as either a decimal or a percent. So an example would be if you played soccer and your team played 12 games and they won 9, I can determine the relative frequency of winning. And you do that by taking your selected outcomes divided by the total frequency. So 9 divided by 12, which would give me 75. I can also do like number of red marbles to the total number of all the marbles I have together. And so let's say I have 9 red marbles and I have a total of 25 marbles. My relative frequency would be about 36% of my marbles are red. All right, Miss B owns an alteration shop and she makes a frequency chart that we're going to convert into a relative frequency chart. She has 50 random customers that she takes data on their waist sizes. Notice I have my waist sizes in intervals. Here's the tally mark of those 50 random customers and where they fall. And we can count up our tally marks to get our frequency. When you add up your frequency, it should total your random sample, which is 50. And when I do that, 3 plus 12 plus 20 plus 14 plus 1, I get 50. Now, to convert this to relative frequency, I'm looking at that ratio part to whole. So I have 3 in that first one out of 50. And when I divide 3 divided by 50, I get 6 hundredths, which becomes 6%. And I can do that for each one of my intervals. And with the magic of computer technology, divide those and get my decimals. What percentage of customers had a waist that measured 28 inches or greater? So when I look at my intervals, I need it to be 28 or greater. So that would be this data here, which when I add 40 plus 28 plus 2, I get 70 or 70%. Which interval has the greatest relative frequency and what is that value? Looking at my relative frequency, the largest is 40 hundredths, which is represented with the waistline of 28 to 30. What percentage of customers had a waist measurement of less than 26 inches? So I'm looking for less than 26, which is right here. So I get 6/10 or 6%. Mrs. B is going to start selling belts at a variety of sizes. And she wants to calculate or figure out what sizes she needs to order to meet her customer needs and to maximize her profit of selling belts. And I want you to pause the tape and think about what she should order and think about why or justify your reasoning. Okay, welcome back. When I look at my tally mark frequency or relative frequency, I can see right here that the largest amount of customers fall within that 28 to 30. And then I can see that the next two waist sizes are right kind of close next to that, the 26 to 28 and the 30 to 32. So my recommendation would be to order sizes between 26 and 32. And the reason why is if I add up these three relative frequencies, 24 plus 40 plus 28 makes 92. So 92% of her customers fall within that waistline size. So therefore, that would be the best size to order. So here I have 25 different programs, and they are observed by their length in commercials. And if you notice, those values are in intervals. And the best graph for intervals is hopefully you're saying histogram. So frequency charts can be graphed using histograms. We're going to complete the table now. And here we have our tally marks. So again, to find the frequency, you're just going to count up those tally marks. I'm going to count or add up my frequency, and they should total 25 because that is in my data sample. Now to calculate the relative frequency, again, I'm looking at that ratio of part to whole, my frequency to the whole, and there are my ratios for each one, each interval. And with the magic of technology, I'm going to divide, remember top number in the box, and there's my relative frequency. And when I add up my relative frequency, it must add up to 1, making it 100, because remember, percents are out of 100. All right, so creating our histogram, you're going to want to use graph paper. And your intervals are always going to be on your horizon. So our horizontal line will be the time. And then our vertical would be our data that was collected and plotting that. So we have our frequency and our relative frequency. Then you would go ahead and fill in your bars. Now we can compare our two histograms. What is similar between the two? Well, hopefully you guys can see that they have somewhat of a normal symmetrical bell curve, and that my range is from 5 to 20 for both of them, and my center would be the interval 10 to 15. So I can write that both histograms have similar shape and similar distribution. So how are our two histograms different? Well, I can look at the height and see that this histogram with frequency is taller than my histogram with relative frequency. And that's because our y-axis, our vertical, have different values. These are all under 1, and these go greater than 1. So I can say that the y-axis values differ. And also, our relative frequency table, remember, is part to whole, and our whole is 25. So it's been divided by 25. So when would relative frequency histograms be more beneficial than a regular frequency histogram? Well, when you are comparing your part to whole, so we're looking at comparing each interval to the entire amount, then our relative frequency is the best histogram to look at for that data. We have completed our lesson on relative frequency. If you have any questions, post those in your Google Classroom discussion page so that I can answer them. or you can see if another student's already asked that question. And make sure you go to Khan Academy and your IXL practice and complete your exit ticket before going on to 8.6.